Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life Was Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites throughout the communities in Massachusetts. Currently, communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the St. Agnes' home, located in Holyoke, Massachusetts. So, what did this house start out as?
It started out its life as the house for the James Newton family. He was a builder, a factory owner, a financier around Holyoke right from the start. Like 1862, he came into town, started building right away. He had gotten his money from railroad building up in Vermont, and he would become the richest person in the history of Holyoke. Now, he had a total of 3 other brothers that came to Holyoke, and a few other brothers did not come to Holyoke. But those 3 brothers who came to Holyoke were also builders of mills, churches, so forth. And they would run them and finance others. For instance, Newton Brothers financed the Skinner family. They financed the Far Alpaca Mill. All right, now this house is at 159 Chestnut Street, and her name is called the St. Agnes Home. And so for that reason, maybe some religious organization owned it along the way. Now, this is a full-length presentation, and it's also a very important house because of what's there now and is still active there now. But only one family has ever lived there, and then when they moved out, it then became organization, then another organization. And so for 150 years almost, it's been only one family and then changed over to organizations. And that's unusual for such a home. And we're going to talk about today the next thing that came in, the Holyoke Clubhouse, then the Holyoke Day Nursery, and then what happened to the house physically through the years, because it's not the same house along the way. Now, if you really want to appreciate this, watch the full-length video of it, almost an hour in length, and also read my webpage on the house. This was part of a series called The House in Holyoke Through Time. I've completed 3 installments. The 4th year next year will hopefully include another home in Holyoke. And it's a very popular series. Now, there's James Newton. He ran many mills, including the Chemical Paper Company on Water Street and Jackson Street. He also ran the Waregon, the Massachusetts Screw Company, the Franklin. A brother opened up the Newton. James opened up the Norman. All right, and he was also head of banks, including the Mechanic Savings Bank, Citibank, People's Savings Bank, and he was a great father and grandfather, and he raised his kids in his house, and only moved out later in life when he retired.
And what was the Holyoke Clubhouse?
Now, they came here in 1912. James Newton had moved out in 1910. One of his children stayed here for a year. Then they abandoned it, or they left it for the next organization. That was in 1912. And they changed the house around, made it larger, because now it was going to be an organization. And they did that in 1915. And also, they stayed here only a few years. So, by 1917, they decided to move out. In 1918, they did move out. And before they moved out, they allowed some returning World War I veterans to stay in the house, have it for a day house where they could stay and eat food, get supplies, and reorganize themselves in life. But after that, it moved on to another institution. Now, this was a high-level men's club. So high level that many of the famous people around Holyoke, mill owners, owners of other high-level businesses, came here. So, for instance, Louis Wyckoff, the owner of White and Wyckoff Postcard Company, he was one of the presidents along the way. Albert Magna, who was head of a car company in Holyoke, was also one of the officers along the way. So this was a very high-level club, but by 1917 it petered out, and this building moved on to other things.
And really quick, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to sign up for any of his various tours or find out more information, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for other inquiries or private tours, you can email him directly at bobcat4214 @yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun, educational, outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, what is the Holyoke Day Nursery?
Okay, they would move in here in 1919. The building had been abandoned for about another year, and they were, just like it says, a nursery. A daytime nursery only, where mothers and fathers could drop off their kids for a small fee and have them be taken care of, and they can go off to their jobs. Now, this group, Holyoke Day Nursery, has started up in 1916, and they were getting bigger and bigger, and they needed a new place. They started up right across from the present-day Holyoke Post Office, in a building, but they were getting so big they wanted a bigger building. And remember that the previous organization, the Holyoke Clubhouse, had expanded the building beyond its original roots to have a connector to the back and a large expansion, and we're going to talk about that afterwards. And so the Holyoke Day Nursery came in. They were a forerunner in the movement of having day nurseries. Massachusetts had a lot towards the east, but I think the Holyoke one was the 10th day nursery ever within Massachusetts. And so they would take care of very young children. Now, remember, this is no substitute for the hour-long presentation that I've given. This is just hoping that this description would encourage you to watch the video that has been made. All right? And so hopefully you do that. Now, the full story of this is that this was a religiously based Holyoke Day Nursery in the beginning. It was an offshoot of St. Jerome's Church, taken up by the Guild of St. Agnes, a woman's guild out of St. Jerome's Church. And that's why they named the building the St. Agnes Home. A nun in charge would live in the building 24 hours a day. In daylight hours, they'd take in many children, take care of them. Of course, she'd have many more staffs beside herself. And it became very successful. Now, they started 1916. They started in this building in 1919. 8 years ago, they celebrated their 100th anniversary. That's incredible for an organization. And they also are now on to 105 years in the same building. And that is amazing for anywhere to have that happen. Sure, you have organizations go a long time, past 100 years, but this was 100 years now in the same building.
And what has happened to the house through the years?
It's expanded beyond its Victorian house roots. It's officially a Second Empire sub-style of Victorian. And I've put for you maps of what the house looked like through the years by using Sanborn Insurance maps. You can see how the home expanded. It might have stayed the same while it was a home for the Newton family. But once it became the Holyoke Club, they made a restaurant in the back between the home and the carriage house. And that restaurant is very large. They also expanded a few rooms towards the back and one towards the side front of the house. And by the time the Holyoke Day Nursery came in, they didn't need to expand. In fact, the reason why they came into this house is because it was more than just a large Victorian home with a carriage house. It had a big restaurant between them. And so it was really three large buildings plus many other small rooms added to the Victorian homes. And so that alone is a great selling point, and that's why they're still there. There's so much room available inside that house.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can check out a large selection of our other podcasts on his website as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with new podcasts and videos posted daily. And thank you for joining us.